YouTube open just to make sure there's no issues. Well, before this starts, I'm gonna go grab another.
Welcome to Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show will have a chat about a Linux project. There's a distribution, desktop environment, or could be an application. We also chat about the news and a variety of topics from the community. Anything that's Linux tech and open source related is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate. How is everybody?
Excellent.
Howdy. Good evening.
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. Oh, Sean has appeared. That's great. So with me today, I got a fantastic group of people here. I got Jason giving me the high five, Jinda, Eric, and Sean, who just walked through the saloon doors here. How is everybody?
Doing good.
Yeah,
Doing good.
no complaints.
Still good? Yeah.
Apparently broke
Okay,
my
good.
camera. There we go.
Because my head's in a loop. You know, I was this is totally an aside.
Excuse me.
Oh, do the straw poll. If you haven't done the straw poll, but it's totally an aside. So my kids are into this game called Portal. It's by Valve. I don't know, has anybody played it before?
Oh yeah.
Long
Yeah.
time ago.
Long time ago.
Yep.
At the very end of the game, there's this very, I don't know, interesting tune called "Still Alive." I don't know if you've heard that or if you remember that at all.
Vaguely,
it's
yeah.
Yeah, if you look it up, after Linux Saloon, go and look it up. But
Okay.
it's a really neat tune, and it's kind of it has this kind of like cutesy, like almost like fairy tale ish kind of like cadence to it, but it has really like dystopian lyrics, and it's just kind of a fun tune. And the way they do the key changes are also just kind of a little weird and fun. But anyway, I liked it so much. I've been noodling it on the piano myself, just because I think it's fun. And I don't know why I'm telling you this, but it's it's just I really appreciate when a game takes the time to make an interesting um, story and music, and they really put a lot of creative effort into something. And I didn't know about Portal until recently, so
Yeah,
haven't
Portal
played it
was
yet.
one of those ones that had a really snarky sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
The narrator, the voice,
Gladys, yeah.
yeah, very tongue in cheek, very sort of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and yeah, that was one. And it's one of those games that's not so in depth. Like you learn the mechanics, and then it's just a puzzle game, and basically you can play one level or play the whole thing. It's really not a super long game from start to finish. And yeah, just fun. I didn't remember the song, but I vaguely remember there being like a goofy song, like a funny song.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah,
if
I
you
haven't even thought of that game in such a long time though,
Been
honestly.
forever.
if you
Yeah.
do think of it, like listen to that song again. It's so funny, and I laughed so hard just listening to it. So I had to like finger it out on the keyboard, piano, whatever.
Gotcha.
But anyway, that's an aside. So on the dock for today, it's an open mic night. So pretty much anything that's Linux tech and open source is on the table for discussion. We got a straw poll that we're going to kick it off with. But first, we're doing Linux and tech. This isn't really what we're doing in Linux and tech, but has anybody here, because this is episode 123, 123rd episode. This is episode 123. Has anybody here used Lotus 123 back in the 90s? Did anybody, was that like anybody's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I used it.
Obviously, I haven't
Sean.
used it in decades.
Which, by the way, Jason, your shirt's hilarious.
Oh, I know. I love it. I love this shirt.
Don't try this at home. I get it. Oh, that's so nerdy. I like it.
Hey, yep.
Yep. But anyway, I thought it was I just when doing going through the show notes, I just happened to see that there's a that Lotus 123 is available in Linux. So this is an article from the Register from 2022, but it says so originally the killer PC spreadsheet Lotus 123 now runs on Linux natively. So as a Google guru who ported it points out, the operating system did not exist when 123 came out in 1983. That's funny to think about. That anyway.
True.
So the long lost native Unix version of the killer PC spreadsheet not only has been rediscovered, but almost unbelievably, it's been updated to create a native Linux version. So Lotus 123 is
Well, that's
arguably
cool.
the single application which made the IBM PC a success. It was launched nearly 40 years ago on January. Well, okay, more over 40 years ago now. 41 years ago, in January 26, 1983. It celebrated its. So the registered also celebrated the 30th anniversary of by firing it up on DOSBox, and more than IBM finally killed it. So it still has its admirers today, and one of them is Google. Google's it says bug hunter Travis Ormandy of Project Zero. And Ormandy, Ormandy explains how he ported Lotus 123 native to Linux here, and then there's a link in the article to that. But he did say, I prefer to use terminal applications when possible. I'm just more comfortable in Xterm. I'm not nostalgic for DOS software or a long-time holdout. I'm a new user in 2020. Now, that seems kind of bizarre to me, really, that a new user would like the terminal like that. But anyway, I
That's
just
crazy.
Yeah. So I just thought it was just an interesting article. I kind of enjoyed just that very idea that somebody would do that. I didn't look into it, and I just thought this was a fun little thing to bring up to kick this whole conversation off. And so I never actually really got into Lotus 123. I started on Excel in my spreadsheet journey. So I don't know, like what was so good about Lotus 123?
Well,
Honestly, I couldn't tell you.
back in the day, there wasn't much out there.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
Lotus 123, and I used a program called The Twin, which was a very close copy, which eventually they did get sued. I had to look it up because I thought they did. But we're going back to 1985. I mean, this has been some time since I've used this software. Yeah, the Twin was the cheap copy.
I couldn't tell you what I was using in 1985. And heck, in 1985, I was 9 years old.
Oh, see, I'm a lot older than you are. I was 15.
So
You are?
it like Jim just said, I mean, there really wasn't a ton out there, and just the idea that you'd be able to do so much with I mean, spreadsheets really made it, they were a huge shift for, I think, business processes and business analytics, and the ability for a non-technical person to essentially have what is more or less a database, right? An interactive database, to be able to quantify things, to be able to, I mean, things that seem like so simple in a spreadsheet today, to be able to create a budget or, do research or whatever it is that you're doing. I mean, it's tremendously helpful for just the basic, aspects of running a business, and or even just a home, or your home itself, and you're researching parts for a new computer, anything. To me, my mind works like a spreadsheet, and so I've mostly spent my time in Excel, but yeah,
Yes.
back in the day, before Excel, yeah, Lotus was the thing, no doubt.
Yep.
So according to Run with the Dolphin, I think if I remember correctly, 123 was on Unix before it was on DOS Windows. That's pretty wild to think about too.
I think that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah, it probably had more horsepower to do that. So
Yeah. Well, and the
Anyway.
idea that because even using like a word processor, just working in the command line, single process system, you're not really doing multiple things, but the idea that people were used to using a computer, and it might seem clumsy today by comparison to something that's a graphical interface, but you just kind of got used to it, and like that's just how you use the computer, and it was efficient, certainly much more efficient than doing things on paper, at least.
Sure, yeah. Do you remember seeing I remember as a kid, I remember seeing these big green. I guess they were spreadsheets. This is what they were. Where people like these ledgers that people write all the numbers in.
Oh yeah. The big wide, yeah.
The big wide paper.
Yeah.
It was white, green, white, green, white,
Yep,
green,
yep,
white,
yep,
green.
yep,
Some of them.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was a
Yep.
dot matrix printer that you had to plug your ears because it was so freaking loud.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember seeing them hand filled out. I could imagine
Oh, they had two types of printers back then. The one was dot matrix, and the other one was a daisy wheel. Do you remember those?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my
Mhm.
God, those things were horrible.
Do you, so speaking of that, do you remember the IBM's typewriter? I think the printer was. It could also be a printer too. I don't remember. It was like a ball, and it had all the letters on it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so that
yeah,
would go in
yeah. And it would go
stripes.
up and
Yes.
down and turn.
Yeah, like you could type super fast, and the thing would just like just be, that ball would just be like having a spasm, and yet it would get everything perfectly. How do they do that?
Well,
I
they
don't know.
had
They don't make them
mechanical
like they used to.
typewriters.
Yeah.
They had mechanical typewriters that they had to figure out how to make work. And what they did
Yep.
is they figured out how fast you could type and had to slow it down to make the mechanical one keep up.
Yeah, but
I see
I'm
Steve's very own in chat. Hey, Steve.
he is. He could join if he wants. Yeah, the Run with the Dolphin says the Selectric. Yep, that was it. I remember like I was just we had one as a kid. I remember I was so I wonder where it is. It's probably thrown away by now. But I was so fascinated by just how that thing would just do what it did. But could we even make that today? I mean, I don't know that we could even make that successfully. It'd probably be some sort of
Oh, it'd be too expensive.
over computerized and constantly need updates to so that the ball would spin in the right direction or something like that.
They get a virus,
Yeah,
start printing the wrong stuff.
yeah,
It
probably.
also weighed about 90 pounds.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that. It was like it
yeah.
was a solid steel thing. I would love to get one of those again just for nostalgia. It'd be like five
That
minutes.
alone would make it expensive nowadays.
Yeah, I would just type on it for like 5 minutes. Like, okay, well, I'm done.
That's what's holding up my bench grinder in my basement, an old typewriter stand. It was so heavy duty. I just mounted a bench grinder to it.
Well, I mean, I guess that's definitely upcycling, right?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Another Lotus clone called As Easy As, according to Donald.
I didn't know that one. So,
I mean, who knows?
yeah. So, Eric, I see you are you've been playing with local generative AI.
Yeah, I've been trying to do so. I've been using AI for more for the things that it's actually good at. No, so not shoving it into a search engine or haphazardly just sort of throwing it at every application you've ever used. Because you have to, right, to keep up with the Joneses. But no, this is actually using it for um, one of the main things is honestly looking at terms of service and documents and things that are large bodies of text that are difficult to get through, that contain a lot of specific clauses that connect to each other but maybe aren't within proximity. So they're kind of difficult to sort of, parse your way through and get the true meaning of what's being said. And that's actually something that a generative AI system does very well. You constrain it and you say, this is the data set that I want you to look at. And I want you to look at it in totality, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about it. And most systems will allow you to upload a document or paste text in, depending on what's most convenient. And the problem with that is then you're using someone else's system, so OpenAI, ChatGPT, or Google's products or somebody else's products. And one of the cool things about generative AI and large language models is that there's a lot of them that are open source, and even the ones that have been commercialized are based off of open source models that have then had additional things laid on top of them. But that means that every company that has trained a large language model, for the most part, has made it available as a open source project. So you can readily access and download these, models that took many, many millions of dollars to train, and have all of the benefit of it. But you have to, unless you're going to set up the environment and do a lot of the work yourself, it's a lot easier if you can use, let's say, a desktop app. And so there's actually been sort of a proliferation of desktop apps and that were designed to run on modest sort of consumer grade hardware instead of a 20, 30, 40 gigabyte VRAM or GPU with that amount of video RAM on it. which are hugely expensive, and not many people are going to run out and just buy ones just so they can run, their own model. These let you actually load them and run from a CPU in local memory and just normal host memory, and then you can also leverage a GPU. I only have a 2060 with 6 gigs of VRAM, so it's not like I have a high-end system at all, but it lets you at least offload some of that processing, and so you have a reasonably good performance out of these desktop systems. And so they are adaptive to the hardware that's available on your system. And then you can do things just like you would do with ChatGPT, where, like I was saying, you can upload a document and say, I want to, summarize this, and please tell me what data, how do they use my user data, or how do they, what are they saying they're allowed to do, or the third parties, or, because every app I get a every week or every other week, have I been pwned, a new alert saying that I'm part of some data breach, and, yet another small company or not so small company got breached, and there's more of my data out there. Not that I can fully prevent it, but the idea that I'd be able to at least look at the terms of service and find out if there's something egregious. So that's been advantageous. And then also stuff like, um, working on websites and then podcasts and things where I have to actually create bodies of text, or at least come up with ideas for blurbs and titles and search engine optimization, just stuff like that. And
Hmm.
excuse me, generative AI is actually really helpful to come up with that kind of stuff, because it is, even though it's just a predictive model of like word modeling, what's coming next, what's probability, what's the next best word, that kind of thing. So not something you necessarily want to rely on for factual information, but really good at being creative. And so, as a matter of fact, I'm trying to rewrite some of the intro and outro stuff for Distro Hoppers Digest, and was able to, using one of these local applications, give it some ideas. Again, giving it the constraints of what I'm trying to get out of it, and then say, okay, within these confines, give me some ideas. And it's mostly just a really good starting point.
Hmm.
Rarely can I just take what it gives me and just use it verbatim. Most times I want to tweak it in some way, but it's a good way to sort of get an idea. I'll say, give me 5 ideas, based off of this, that could be, a one sentence, two sentence blurb to sort of describe this in a succinct way. Uh, Use more sort of formal business language. No, okay, I want it to be actually a little more less formal. So make it more speech oriented, like how someone would say it versus write it. And, you can just transform things so easily. But again, if you're relying on ChatGPT, or you're relying on, Bing, or Copilot or Gemini or these other products, one, they have limits usually on how many queries you can do per day. Two, they have limits on the functionality that they give you for free, beyond just the number of queries that you can make. And so it starts to become cumbersome to, like, be in the middle of doing something and have it say, "Oh, sorry, you're out of uses for today, so you could pay
Hmm.
us if you want." And I guess if I was using it all day, every day, or wasn't as comfortable running stuff locally like I am, that I would be more apt to pay for it. But frankly, the idea that they're using my queries as a means to train their systems, and I know it's supposed to be anonymized and not connected back to me, but I've logged into their system, and so they know who I am. And it's not like I'm doing anything sensitive, but yet again, it's more data that I don't
That's going on.
necessarily want a company to have. So being able to run it locally, contain it locally, have everything stay on my system, is much more suitable to my sensibilities. So yeah, I mean, there's stuff, even on like Flatpak or FlatHub, Alpaca and GPT for All are two really good options on there. I've got some other things in the show notes, but yeah, there's been a bit of a proliferation, and those are desktop based, so you'd literally be loading it like a desktop app and then just using it on the hardware that's there. If you want, you can also do stuff like Docker images or a client server model, where you've got a server process running on a more powerful system that maybe you're not necessarily sitting in front of, but then you connect to, Either they have a like a web front end or a client
Mm-hmm.
application that you can connect via an API. So there's those as well. And a lot of those are much more complicated to set up than a desktop application, but they tend to have good documentation for the most part, and can be a lot more powerful than the desktop apps because they're much more configurable and modular, and you can do more things with them. But yeah, I think if anyone's interested in trying it, the nice democratization aspect of this is that even if you don't have incredibly powerful hardware, you can still load one of these and run it. It's going to chug and it's going to be kind of slow, but it will actually function and you will get an answer. It'll just take a few minutes to chug it out. The difference being that if it's your CPU, you're getting sort of word versus a GPU where it's a steady stream of like,
Mm-hmm.
so
So I,
um
I was gonna say I had a I was using GPT for all, and you said that you can like
mhm,
load documents in there, and I did
mhm.
install Alpaca, but I didn't actually get anywhere with it. I just it looked like it's kind of the same thing as GPT for all,
Yeah.
but anyway, what I thought was really neat is so I got this 1990s Korg N364 keyboard. In fact, you may have
Mhm.
seen it behind me in my lab. And I hadn't used it because there was an issue like the tuning was all off, like it just did not sound right. It would look sounded terrible, and I didn't know how to fix that. And I did some web searches some time ago and found nothing. So what I did was I took the PDF documents that are scanned, and then I actually OCR converted them so they could be parsed, by the language model, and then I added those as documents. And so I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of words between the two documents, and I asked it if it could tell me where it was in the instructions to find to like basically to adjust the tuning. And then what I what I it didn't actually give me the answer I needed, but it got me so close to the answer where I could then there's different like regional tunings that this keyboard can do. So depending on like where like Indian music and Arabic music has a different uh, uh, frequency spacing between the notes. Essentially, I don't know, for
Oh,
lack of a better
okay.
term.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
so like when you go up and down the keyboard and each half step whatever, it's a little bit different for different regions. So someone had just changed the region on it, and all I had to do was just fix it to being, I think, like classical bright or something like that. It basically the default for how most instruments are tuned. And so
Gotcha.
that fixed it. And basically, it had been sitting there, not quite collecting dust because I put a towel on it to keep dust off of it, but essentially collecting dust for years because I did not know how to fix this or even that was an option. But thanks for and even with web searches, I couldn't find the answer. But thanks to the well, also I could have probably read through the manual if I were that motivated. But thanks to this AI model, it got me close enough to the solution that I could then you know fix it. And also I just run it locally on my computer, which is very nice because I'm not I can be offline and it doesn't matter. Like I don't have to be connected to the internet; it just runs, which is super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think, just in general, I know when I start talking about AI and stuff, I mean, so one of the things I actually had an offshoot of the other day was I actually was playing with uh, voice generation,
Mm-hmm.
which I hadn't done before, and I set up a system where I just recorded a 10-second blurb of me speaking and then was able to generate a fairly convincing model of my voice that was then I was able to just basically type whatever I wanted. And not only does it create speech that sounds similar, it's not me. Like it's if you knew me, you would know it's not my voice, but you can do more to tweak it to get it to sound more convincing. But ultimately, it was able to create something that was a close enough facsimile. And the thing that's impressive to me is it's not like text to speech of old where it was just sort of like it didn't really have the inflection or the emotion or the context, I guess, of being able to read ahead and see what the punctuation is, or however it's sort of taking into consideration. But it does a very good job of sounding much more lifelike, much more convincing than it did previously. And
What
again, this is running on my crappy hardware, so I can't imagine what something with like performant, hardware would be like. So,
what are you using for that particular function? Which one of those
um,
applications?
I don't even remember. Let me see what it's called.
This is gonna sound maybe a little bit twisted or weird, maybe.
Hmm.
But my dad's been gone for I don't know, 18 years now,
Hmm.
and sometimes I forget what his voice sounds like, and I think it'd be fun to like have him yell at like type in something that he would yell at me, and just so I could hear his voice again. That'd be great. You know
If
that.
you, yeah, if you have audio of him, yeah, I mean it's totally possible. So, let's see.
I do have some audio, but it's like from 1986, so it's not like the greatest quality. And I have some other stuff too. I don't know how you feed it the information, but I could probably like from
So
2004 or three.
the one I was using was called Alltalk, Alltalk, and I don't think it's necessarily just it has a standalone system, but I think it's supposed to be built into like these uh like chat apps or something. I'm not sure how it works, but anyway, it gives you a local, like you run it and it sets everything up, and then you can load a web panel where basically it gives you a certain number of default voices, and then you can type in text into a box and have it just generate on the fly. And then so I think there's lots of different ways to run it, but this one in particular, and what they all tend to do is just take bits and pieces of different code, and they all are using CUDA uh, or what is it? Trying to think of the Vulkan. It's either using Vulkan or CUDA for the NVIDIA, part of if it can use the NVIDIA, it will, and that type of thing. So, um, yeah, and so these projects more or less are just putting together all these disparate pieces that exist out in the world,
Okay.
and then make it so that you can run it either as like a Docker container or even just install stuff natively. Containers tend to be a little better because there's so much stuff that it's downloading, like all these little pieces, and it's different, like, relying on Python a lot of times, and Python is very specific about the versioning, and if you have one thing that relies on it and then you try to install something else, it can like cause conflicts. And so if it can be a container, then it's a little easier to deal with. And so, it ends up that I'm running just a series of like Docker containers, and then you have to sort of know, okay, start this one. And it's all very sort of complicated and convoluted in a lot of ways. Um, but at the end of the day, it does sort of work. It's nothing I would consider like production quality, but it's fun to
I,
just sort of play around with and see what's possible.
I'm more interested in it for the lulls.
Yeah, 100%. That's really what
Yeah.
it's about for me. Is I'm just, I feel like I sort of missed out on the initial move towards cloud technologies with containerization and stuff like that. And I don't know, this idea that so much of this stuff, if not almost all of it, is open source, or at least based on open source technology. So the ability to download it, try it out, test out different systems, and just sort of get an idea of like how this stuff is put together and how it's working is, yeah, it's pretty neat. I can't say I'm actually gaining anything meaningful from it other than just having some familiarity with how it works. And I think it's what it's done for me, at least, is it's taken that hype cycle and all of that like constant, marketing garbage that's being shoved out about like what, this whole idea that it's intelligent or artificial intelligence at all. I think is a terrible name for it. But it is kind of interesting from like a standpoint of a predictive model and like what we've been able to do from you know, from the different perspectives. We have art aspect like visual, we have the auditory from music and speech, we have text from the chat GPTs and stuff like that. And so we're sort of covering these different ways of human expression, and none of them are true to life. None of them are even remotely close to anything I'd call real, you know, intelligence. But also at the same time, I've seen how, just from my standpoint, I've been able to use it and have it help me do different things that otherwise would be tedious or time consuming. So I think it's a worthwhile technology when it's used for what it does well. But unfortunately, what's happening is, I think because of the amount of investment that companies have made in it, they're really trying hard to figure out how to recover some of that. Like, how are they going to monetize it? So there you go.
Yeah, they're shoehorning it into everything, which is, I don't think it's the
Yeah, it's
best idea, but whatever, I guess.
no, no, definitely not. Anyway, yeah, that's been my little diversion as of late, and that and editing podcasts and things. But
No, it's a fun
that's it.
diversion.
Yeah.
So we are short in Erish this week. I think he's been busy with activities, family things. I think. I don't know. I didn't ask. Figure if he wanted me to know, he'd let me know.
Yeah.
But we had a straw poll. So which best describes the power management on your main desktop? So I don't know if Eric, if you would like to take it
Yeah.
away from
Oh,
me.
or let's just say your main. I know it says main desktop computer, but I would say probably more your main computer. Not
Yeah.
everybody. I think the idea of desktops are slowly starting to, well, maybe not slowly. I think it's just not what it
Mm.
was before. Uh,
And good
yeah.
evening, peoples.
Good evening,
Hey, Ben.
Ben. Oh, yeah, I should say Ben, Terry, thank you for being here. LeVar.
No worries.
I don't know if that's like LeVar Burton or not. If it
Yeah,
is, that'd be really
and
cool because it's one of my
well,
favorites.
well, I managed to jump in, Nate, because my dad and I were watching Star Wars, and he fell asleep. He was tired.
Yeah? Is it
Yeah.
that bad? I thought
No,
Ben
no,
would
no.
stop.
He just no. He was just tired in general.
Oh, okay. Well, when my father would fall asleep to a movie, then I knew it was a good movie because he could fall asleep to it.
Yeah, he was enjoying it.
Very
However, I'd
generous.
enjoyed it more because I stayed awake.
Which Star
This is
Wars?
true.
Anyway, The Rise of Skywalker.
Okay.
But either way, so to respond to the topic of power management, I've personally never figured it out, so I don't really have a response to this one, my friend.
Well, actually, if you do the straw poll, go ahead and check out that straw poll real quick before
Yes,
because it's not as it's not as technical of a question
involved.
in that you might think.
All
So
right,
yeah,
well, I'm gonna go look at it real quick.
Yeah, it's more to do with, do you leave it on? So the questions were, or the options were, um,
Yeah.
your choice would be always on, turn on when
Mm,
it's first needed, then turn off at the end of the day.
okay,
It automatically sleeps when not in use. It automatically
okay.
hibernates when not in use. Other,
Mm,
which is always there, and then of course Tux Penguin. So the results of the poll were, we had
I
37
just threw
votes.
mine in, guys.
Good. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate that.
No worries.
All right, so we've got 37 responses. Number one with 13 votes is always on. Number two is turn on when it is first needed, then turn off at the end of the day, which is, I think, pretty common. I've heard a lot of people do that. Third is it automatically sleeps when not in use. Fourth is other, and I do have a few other comments. Uh, Fifth is it automatically hibernates, which hibernate seems to be less common nowadays than just the general sleep. And then with one vote, we have Tux Penguin. And so, yeah, we had a response, two replies to other, which is, I use my PC once in a while throughout the day. It does nothing part of the time, and it plays TV shows at night. The living room TV is turned on when I want it and put to sleep when I want to go to bed. Stream Deck is on, sleep, on, sleep, on, sleep randomly, and I don't use the other 6 computers much. I have an old Asus with Zorin on it, and I put a new battery in it, but it's so slow. Shrug emoji.
Mhm.
I might be donating computers soon. I have voted always on. And then the other response was, I think it's a mixture of always on, but at times I put it to hibernate, and then probably at least once a week we'll shut it down. I'll shut it down if I'm only using one user account. If I'm using two user accounts, then I will usually let it hibernate. So it seems like it's a mix of either it's just always on, or so it seems like it's passive, right? Either it's always on or it will put itself to sleep. But or I guess the other option would be that is less passive is when you need it, you turn it on, you use it, and then before you shut it down before you leave for the day, you turn it off. And I think I used to do that more frequently, especially because when I was a Windows user, it was the type of thing where, and especially back then in the Windows 9X days, like you just couldn't reliably use Windows for many, many days without
Right.
needing to reboot
Mhm.
eventually because you'd have driver
Yep.
conflicts and just hardware faults and stuff. So,
I
so
like
I
the
think
it's now safe to
Yeah.
shut off your computer.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, old
yeah,
Macs used to do
exactly.
that too. The classic Mac OS used to do that too. It's like it's now safe to turn off your computer.
Yep, your disks have stopped writing. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I still see that as a viable thing. The only thing I would say against it is depending on what your backup strategy is. In a lot of cases, backups will run like after hours so that it's not interfering with you while you're using it. So unless you've built in time for whatever type of backup process, then turning it off could be problematic. But I guess
Yeah.
probably a lot of people don't think about it or do it that way. I'm not sure.
No, I'd usually do my back personally, with at least with the Windows systems. I pretty much do my backups manually.
Okay.
I just go through and send them all to the file. Anything I feel needs to be backed up over to the file server from whatever system. But
Gotcha.
my systems personally, like I have three systems, excuse me, that stay on 24/7, which is my main Windows machine, my Mac Mini, and then the server. I mean, I wish I could leave all the machines on,
Mm,
but being in Florida, that is not an option.
yeah.
Even with this time of night and those three machines, it's still, 77 degrees in my room with central
Toasty.
AC.
Yeah.
Um, but so if I had ran a laptop, personally, I don't. I usually shut those off. I don't like to close the lid because then it sleeps and then, or hibernates typically, depending on your power settings, or yeah, or just continues to run, which is bad as well in my opinion because it just generates heat.
Mm,
I don't like sleep or hibernate because, especially I've had nothing but issues with even with Linux machines trying to come back from that mode. So half the time, it just it's not a smooth transition. So
gotcha.
I don't appreciate. I don't really. I just don't like to sleep and hibernate. I just like to leave my machines on if I'm using them.
So
Got it.
Anarita says in the chat says I turn off when not needed or not being used because electricity is expensive here where I am. So I turn off my laptop and power surges as well. So I'm guessing maybe unstable power grid. Says plus I'm afraid the house will catch fire if not OCD freaks out.
Now I can relate to that one right there, the house fire, because we had one of those in 2014, and it was an electrical fire, but it wasn't. It was, we don't know what
Was
actually,
it a
what.
toaster?
No, it was in the living room where
It was the
we had
PlayStation.
all the the um what's what I'm looking for, the sound system and all that kind of
Hi-fi.
stuff there. We also had the at the time our like a Plex server, but it was running Windows Media something or whatever back in that day. I don't remember what it's called, but we had all kinds of hard drives in that machine, but it was something inside the that ran up the wall, so it was either the plug or the outlet, or it was a surge protector ran and it caused the fire to go up the wall. But luckily, our house was so airtight that the fire went out and smoldered.
Mm.
And so we just ended up having to redo the inside of the house instead of the whole house.
Well,
And luckily we had homeowners insurance. But
Yeah.
yeah, I can relate to the whole worrying about the fire thing. Trust me, it's always in the back of my mind now.
I'm sure that'll stick with
Right,
you for
Bob?
sure.
Right, Bobby?
Yeah.
That will stick with you. Yep. So what about you,
Have
Eric? What do you do?
I my laptop, I use it and then just shut it when I'm done with it, and so it's just goes to sleep. Um, which is fine if you're leaving it plugged in. Like I don't, this laptop almost never gets taken anywhere. So it just sort of sits here and, it's plugged in. So whenever you shut it, it goes to sleep, but it's got power to it. So it's not like it's going to kill the battery and then, be dead, which is kind of what happens if you put it to sleep and then don't use it frequently. So I would shut it down, except that, I just expect to lift it up and continue where I left off, which is the advantage of sleep. My desktop PC, I have just running continuously, which is probably not the best idea in the world, except that I tend to use it for not only desktop stuff, but also as like a sort of a poor man's server where I've got Plex and just different processes running on there that it's hosting that I just would rather just have available. And so I just let it run. I was going to actually ask if anyone does anything or has done anything with Wake on LAN, which I have in the past. I had a server, a file server in particular that it was set so that it would sleep. And then if there was
Mm.
any call to it over the network, it
Yeah,
would fire back up.
not personally. I haven't done anything Wake on Land personally. When I worked for Bank of America did a lot of that because a lot of
Yeah.
people were after during COVID and stuff they were working remotely, but they would remote into their systems, some of the systems that they had to get access to on site, and those we'd have to sometimes send a ping to it to the remote the Wake on LAN or remote thing to get to wake up.
Right.
Sometimes they wouldn't just do it by the login for whatever reason. It was just pain in the butt. Um, so we'd have to go in. So eventually, what we ended up doing was just switching everybody to virtual machines. Um, they got some sort of deal somewhere where they're using Xeon Golds and set everybody up with all kinds of virtual machines all over the Bank of America.
Interesting. What about you, Ron? Do you leave your computers on?
Yeah, I use mostly laptops and I think two desktops. For the desktops, I have them set to be adaptive, meaning that if there's not a heck of a lot of foreground, even background tasking going on, CPU drops down to like 600 megahertz, 800 megahertz. Screen goes off. USB ports still stay alive, but yeah. But power consumption goes down tremendously. Drives stop spinning. We still have some spinners. For my laptops, I use mostly Debian-based things like Linux Mint, Debian Edition. I've got a very specific profile. When I'm plugged in, screen goes off after about 5 minutes. Machine never sleeps. Machine never hibernates. If I close the lid, it goes to sleep. If I unplug and I close the lid, it goes to sleep. And if I just go on and do something else, I think the spec is about 2 hours after being in sleep mode, it hibernates, which is awesome. I just love that.
Cool.
It's just perfect. I used to use the Ubuntu-based Linux Mint for years, really, since late 2016. And the only thing missing was that hibernate from sleep. And I read some white papers on how to do it, but not the smartest whip around here. And I couldn't get it to work, so went with the Debian edition, never looked back. And that was about 3 years back. So that's my profile really for all my laptops. Yeah. Old machines, new machines, whichever. and it works extremely well. I've heard that on a slight tangent, I also use TLP to, since these are all ThinkPads, to cut down power consumption in a big way when on battery. And from what I understand, Linux Mint Debian Edition 6, the latest version, because of changes in the kernel, TLP no longer functions or it interferes with something else that's in the kernel. I haven't looked closely at it, but I did do a dry run on a machine with Debian Edition 6, and no, TLP no worky. So when I get back from vacation, I'll figure that out as to how to get it to work again because I am very dependent on it. Yeah, to extend battery life.
Have you tried the what's it called now? Does he Tune D, TUNED, I think.
Tune
It's
ID, maybe?
no Tune, TUNED.
Oh, no, I haven't tried that.
Yeah, it's
I just love TLP so much. I mean, you can tailor the heck out of battery charge, discharge kind of parameters, when to start charging, when to stop charging.
Were you using TLP UI or were you doing it by a config file?
Oh, I was just messing with the config file.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was great.
I bet
You can mess around with all the radios like Bluetooth and the actual wireless card and stuff. One of my machines has a WWAN adapter in there too that came in handy because that thing sucks a lot of juice while not in use. So yeah,
yeah, TLP UI is kind of neat just because it shows you. I mean, the config file does a good job, I guess, of sort of calling out different areas and things,
yeah,
but the UI is nice because it sort of just gives you a feel for like what is available, what's possible, and it
without
also
being too
has, yeah, without being too like esoteric. And
overwhelming.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's I think about 4 or 5 pages of parameters you can tune, which at first blush, oh, especially with CPU governors. So I like it.
yeah. I've made a few mistakes getting heavy-handed in there from time to time.
Yeah,
You
it's
can,
easy.
yeah, yeah. You can kind of not everything is named in a way that is logical, or at least to me, it didn't. It sounded like it would do one thing, but ultimately was not what I thought it was going to do.
Yeah,
But
especially with the CPU governing and setting the curves for how the CPU speed should react depending on workload. It's a little confusing. I mean, I tried to parse that language they use, and you almost have to fractionate it into syllables, single syllables, to really get what they're coming from. But you know what? I chuckle when I think of it. Windows 7, I love Windows 7 to this day, and the way you can tune your power profile, power consumption profile on battery with Windows 7 was just amazing. I just loved it to death. I used to have like work power profile, vacation power profile. That would mean that I'm slow CPU, but I'm high brightness. And I never get up to maximum speed because you're sitting on the beach, man. It's bright. You don't need that much juice,
I don't
but
need
you
my
want the
laptop at the
battery to
beach.
last. I do. I can't live without it, so hey,
Okay.
there it is. Is it a
Sorry,
feature or a bug? I don't know.
a feature. At least I'm gonna call it a feature.
Yeah,
Anybody else got that?
I'll have to
Comment on
try
that?
that. Tune D.
Yeah, it's what at least in Tumbleweed, it's what replaced the TLP, and it integrates with the Plasma desktop. And I think that's why. So you can actually, the Plasma desktop has control over the all the power features, I guess.
Hmm.
So
I used another one too, Slimbook battery, um, which is kind of the same in some ways. It sort of incorporates different things. So it has it integrates with other things. So it has integration with TLP and Intel P State, AMD, NVIDIA, and stuff like that. And it's made for Slimbook computers, but it's also compatible with other brands, at least to some extent. And the advantage of it is it has a pretty nice UI. And so yeah, that's another one I've played around with. And I don't know. It's all a little bit of black magic. And each machine is slightly different, so it's hard to just kind of say, oh, well, just set it to this. And you got to
Right.
kind of tweak it based on the machine itself and what's possible and what isn't based on the BIOS and the hardware and how it's exposed and stuff like that. So
And the state of affair on your batteries too. I mean, if you've got a brand new battery, you've got a pretty decent handle on how to tune your power profile, right? But I find when the batteries get down to about 65, 70%, you really have to rejig the parameters.
yeah, my
Yeah.
my batteries. I already replaced this battery once because it had started to swell, and I had to replace it because of that. But and I actually got a good battery as a replacement, not just like a junky eBay one.
Hmm.
And this one is already back down into the like 50%
Oh,
range.
wow.
So yeah,
Do you charge it up fully to like 100%?
the problem is I never take it anywhere. I only ever really sit here and have it plugged in,
Ah,
and I do unplug it and plug it back in and try to power cycle it and stuff. But I mean, I replaced it probably 3, 4 years ago, so it's a daily
oh,
use.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's just it kind of batteries only last as long as they last, and
that's right.
They last
so
based off cycles.
Yeah.
that's true, but it's not only cycles. I mean, it is also chemistry and just the fact that like over time, um, it
Yeah, you're
does just
effectively trickle charging it for all those 3.5 years, and
yeah,
that
Hmm.
does nothing good to the cells.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Uh,
mean, it kind of is what it is. If I could
Yeah.
get something that was more like a capacitor instead of a true battery, and you know what I mean, because you can do
Yeah.
that for some devices.
A
So,
super cap, yeah.
Now,
hmm
might be time
yeah.
for a desktop instead of a laptop
I,
if you
I,
never go anywhere. Like a
it,
like a
it,
one of those like mini PC type things.
But I sit where I sit, it's really more convenient to have a laptop. So I don't
Oh
care.
yeah,
It
well, like one of those
it
little
is what
mini
it is.
PCs. Like,
Yeah.
like just
Nah,
like
that would be more annoying than anything because it would just be cords and monitors and junk. Like the laptop, the beauty of that
yeah,
is the
it's
form
true.
factor that it's self-contained. So
Yeah.
Time for an
I'm a
iMac.
mix of mobile and docked a lot, so I'm always using my battery. I try not to let it go below 20%, but sometimes I do. But if I'm gonna be like I went, uh, I went roughing it recently, and for fun with a tent and everything else, and so I brought to power my
Power
things.
tools.
I brought it's actually something I made if you can't tell, um, but so I can plug my laptop in, and keep it going for basically ever, or the Steam Deck or whatever, because when you're camping, you definitely need a laptop for
Roughing
camping.
it, he says.
Yeah, well, I mean, same levels of wall batteries. All right, by roughing it, I mean I slept on the ground in a tent. I didn't sleep in my Tempur-Pedic bed.
Roughing it. Sorry, I had to go there,
Camping.
Nate.
That's right.
Is it wrong to carry in your Honda Pilot a spare 800 cca battery like the Type 24F? And it's just sitting in the back just in case you need to use that
Wow.
inverter
See, when I go anywhere, I
to
bring
power
one
your
thing.
equipment.
I bring an iPhone, my phone with me. That's the only thing I bring with me.
Well, the things I was trying to stay on top of, and also Steam Decks. Steam Decks are fun. Can also I how I have programmable lights on my house. I have a 5-volt variant that I use for my Christmas tree, and so I took those with, and I lined the tent with that, so I could have lights going as well, twinkling. It was fun. I know
Yeah.
that's silly, but powered
yeah, I
by
just checked if sorry if you use U power, there's a U power command that you can check the battery info. at least on Ubuntu based systems, and it's at the designed power is 55.9 watt hours, and the energy full currently is 36.3 watt hours. So it's at 65% capacity right now.
Yeah.
So
I have a guy relatively local to me that I've been using forever. Equivalent, I think about 40, 45 bucks US equivalent dollars to resell all my batteries. I
oh,
use
neat.
him for laptop batteries and power tool batteries. Yeah. I even resell NiCads, which is kind of stupid, but there it is.
Some of those batteries you can't even get, and so it's like if you don't resell them, then I mean it's like you don't really have a choice depending on the age of the device.
Yeah.
And a lot of those things too are, even if the cell inside is a standard size, the form factor of the full pack, for power tools and stuff, is such that it'll be like some sort of proprietary,
Yeah.
connector or something weird like that. So that's cool. That's
Yeah.
there can't be many people doing that. That's a bit of a lost art, I'd guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think I know what his costs on the cells are, and I'm looking at how much he charges me. I'm going, dude, you just trashed about 45 minutes repairing this battery pack, full hands on, and you might have made about $18 on it.
Yeah.
Is this worthwhile for you? He goes, yeah, I do it on my spare time. I go, okay.
Good for
Watching
me.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they,
I'm just happy to have that kind of service so I can keep my ancient machines going forever.
Hmm.
I mean, I respect the game for sure.
My reasoning is quite stupid when you think of it. I mean, um, the machine I'm staring at right now hails from November 2011. Yeah. The only reason I like it is, well, the main reason I like it is the 7-row keyboard.
Honestly, I that's when you get a keyboard that you really like, I get it.
Model M's and this one. Yep.
What's on the seventh row? I just counted and I have six. What would
Hmm?
be on the seventh row?
Oh, for example, on mine, you've got half size scroll lock, um,
Is like media
print screen,
buttons
scroll
or
lock, pause, insert.
oh, so
That,
it's not as wide. It's taller than it is wide.
yes,
So okay, I got you. I got you. I
yeah,
got you.
and the mute button,
That's what I
volume
was
up,
gonna
volume
say.
down, and
Yeah,
the Think
that's what I
Vantage
figured.
button, that blue button,
Yeah.
and the
What is that?
inverted T that actually works properly, like
What?
God intended it to. Yeah. So yeah. And the newer style, I just can't get with it. I cannot. Everyone on the planet, it seems, love it to death. The new, kind of like a landing shape to it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's down to 6-row like everything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
must have my track point. I can't have, what's that thing that's open source? You've got one, Nate,
Touchpad?
I think. Libra,
Nate,
no.
probably Nate, the framework.
I got the
Framework,
framework.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I know what
Yeah.
you're talking about. I was like, I had to sit there and brainstorm for a second.
The only reason I don't have one is that no track point.
They said maybe someday. It's one of those things.
Yeah, I can't see it happening, the width, but you never
But
know.
yeah, you could fit it in there. Maybe
Fingers
right there between
crossed.
the GH and B, I believe, or is it? Yeah, it's between the GH and B, right?
Yeah, G, H, and B. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Be perfect. Be perfect. I think. So
And I know that track points are highly desired because you can go on eBay and buy replacement nipples,
Mhm.
singlies, tens, 100. Oh, would you like 1,000? Not a
No.
problem.
Well, I mean, if you want to
Oh,
play a
that's
mean
what you're
trick on
talking. Oh,
somebody.
little nipple things.
So I
Yeah.
just played with U Power just because I knew it was installed. I just didn't know how to use it. and you can have it enumerate all your devices. So I see the battery, I see line power, my headset, and then display device. So I wonder, it must be just the laptop screen then. So I'm thinking that might be.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So
Does it allow you to adjust any parameters for any of the devices showing up?
That's a good
so
question. I don't know. I was doing it just to see the dash I
See
as the
what's happening?
information. Yeah.
show info.
You power.
Yeah.
I think it's just an informational thing.
Let me see. Yeah, U-Power tool, and it says enumerate devices, dump all parameters, get the wake up data, monitor activity from the power daemon,
Right.
monitor with detail, show information.
Show info.
Yeah, that's all. It's mainly just for info. Yeah, that's all. But it is nice to, like, I just did my my headset, and you can see the battery percentage that it currently has, and yeah, kind of neat.
Wow, I do U power space dash I, and all I get for my troubles is carriage return and a flashing cursor.
We'll
No information.
do dash dash enumerate first, and then
Ah,
it'll show you all your devices.
gotcha.
And then once you have a device, you do the entire line. So the /org/free desktop /u powered, like copy the whole line and then do the dash I and then paste that line in, and it'll show you the specifics for that item.
Interesting.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I've got my mouse, which is battery powered, my Bluetooth headset, the battery that's built in, the line power AC, the display device, like Nate said. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's pretty cool.
Hmm.
A new toy, a new command line toy for me to play with.
Oh boy.
Command line is best line.
Oh, I love command line stuff. I love Ranger. One of my favorite command line things.
Yeah, that is good.
All right. Well, let's get moving along to the next topic. So it's an open mic night, so pretty much anything anyone talk about goes. And
I have
that
something, Nate.
Oh, what is that?
Well, the reason I was sort of jibber jabbering on the keyboard a few minutes ago, sorry about that, was
hear it.
the what was I am currently, you know how I said I would be making a Storm OS LFS version, right? Well, that's slowly in production, guys. But here's the kicker. It's going to, I'm making it into a script actually to start from. I used ChatGPT to make it into a script that starts out, building the basic LFS system with multilib. And the init system is going to be, drum roll please somebody, Nate. It is going to be OpenRC, baby. It's not going to be system. It's the init system within Artix Linux and Gentoo. So I am copying the init system from within Gentoo and porting it to my LFS.
Well, that's cool. And so that means that you can be able to provide a script for somebody to take that and then run with it and be able to...
Well, basically, I'm going to say this. If you don't have knowledge of LFS, I would recommend building it the vanilla way at least once before trying my script. Because honestly, look, scripting LFS, even with ChatGPT, I cannot recommend it. Now, if I was to explain this script, what it essentially does is you have to run it within an Arch Linux system because it heavily depends on Pacman in order to run, and that's because it pulls in end curses and dialogue, so it makes it a little bit easier. But I highly recommend, and it has to run within a terminal to run it. Now, I might add a GUI front end. That's only if this script works, just so you guys know. I'm still actively testing this, so I will probably throw it up on like Pastebin or a GitHub or something like that, just to see what kind of feedback I get from it. So either way, yeah, that's how that's going to work. Now, I still have yet to fully automate the rest of the LFS packages. I will add that in there here shortly, but yeah, it does. And also, you also have to specify your time zone. And the disk will be written to the specific disk you have in there. But either way, yeah, it should be fine. So yeah.
Well, good deal.
So other than that, yeah, that's my script. I just wanted to throw that out there, and hopefully I'll have this done after the show is done, so that way I can distribute the script within the Telegram group for people to try it out and see how that sucker goes. So yeah,
Yeah, I think it'd be fun to do Linux from scratch at some point in time, and maybe just use, I might
yeah,
just like
yeah.
right out of the gate
Now,
just use your
if you
script.
guys do, now here's the thing. If you
I don't have
guys
that kind of
want to
patience.
check out this script, if you want to check out this script, go ahead. And maybe it would be a fun distro exploration to check out the script. Just to see how the heck it goes.
Yeah,
let's make
I
sure
might
it works first, though.
Yeah, an LFS episode.
have to
Now,
pre-test it.
I would highly recommend doing this in a virtual machine environment, just because I don't know how the heck this is going to end up on real hardware. I will be testing this on my 11th gen system later tonight. Maybe during the post-show section, but yeah, we'll see how this goes. So,
Oh, goodness, Sean. That was a good one.
Yeah, Sean.
yeah, do a show on this. That would be kind of funny, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be
Hey
fun.
Ben, which VM thing are you using? VirtualBox or?
Good question, Ron. I normally use VirtualBox, but I might be switching over to VM Manager, KVM at some point. I don't know, but right now it's a VBox. Yeah.
And are you having any issues with VBox?
Why do you ask?
Oh, because I've been having some emotional moments
Okay.
with the latest greatest version 7.
That can
I
happen.
had to go back down to 6.1.
Yeah, that was the
good
last one.
grief.
I haven't upgraded mine
Well,
yet.
well, I would recommend trying out Vert Manager because see how that goes for you. And I haven't tested VirtualBox on any dead-based distros like Ubuntu or Mint or anything like that recently. But yeah, if all else fails, Ron, I recommend looking at Vert Manager to see how
Manager.
that goes. Now what I do when I run VirtualBox is I don't grab it within Synaptic or anything like that or through apt. I grab the run file and then the extension pack manually. That's how
Oh, from their website.
virtualbox.org. Yes,
Yeah.
that's the way I do it, regardless
Yeah,
of
that's the
distro.
way I do it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend trying version 7 from within that and seeing if that works, because sometimes grabbing it through your distribution's package manager sometimes can cause a little bit of headache. So I recommend always, when you're running VirtualBox, get it that way and see what that
Go
does.
to the source. Yeah.
Go to the source package. Yes, that's the way I would recommend it. Even when I'm on a binary system, that's just the way I go about it. So,
Well, good deal.
Just like your
but
beef, go
yeah,
to the butcher.
Right.
yes,
Exactly.
my friend, do it that way.
Go to the source.
Anyway, so yeah, hopefully the script will be done within 45 minutes. I'm not guaranteeing that, but we'll see how that goes.
Well, cool.
Take your
Yeah,
time, get it done right.
Put it in the Telegram.
All right,
and,
well, we'll see how it goes. Thanks.
I'll let you know if I have any issues.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, so I was listening to one of my favorite retro podcasts called This Week in Retro. So it's like news, like up to date news for out of date tech, I think is like their tagline, which is funny to me. Anyway, there's an episode 183. It was, what was your first GUI that you used? And I thought, oh, that'd be a good thing to bring up here. What was the first graphical user interface you used? So a lot of us use DOS or Commodore 64 OS or, the Apple II. Maybe not a lot of us anymore. At one time. So when you first started using computers, what was the first graphical user interface you ever used? Jason, I want to hear what yours was.
Mine was, let's see, my first computer was the Commodore. So let's see, the Commodore DOS.
To the but the graphic interface, like Windows or Mac or GeoS on the Commodore 64.
Oh, shoot, yeah. So it'd be Commodore, yeah, it'd be something with Commodore 64 would be the first thing that I ever used, and then going into the Windows after that.
Okay,
I didn't
that's
use Mac until the last few years.
gotcha. All right. What about you, Jindo? What was your first? Did you use like the Palo Alto uh, Xerox? Was that your first?
It's gonna have to be Windows, and I'm trying to remember. It wasn't. It was either version 3 or 3.1. Was the first one I used with a graphical user interface.
Okay.
I mean, I had a leading edge Model D running DOS before that.
Right. It was at the time. I think I can, if I remember correctly, like people were, this
Hmm.
the graphic interface was nice, but it wasn't as productive at the time or whatever.
You needed a lot more RAM to run it,
Yep.
and back then RAM was
Yeah,
expensive, and
sure,
yeah,
Everything was expensive computer-wise back then.
yeah.
it's true. You really had to be an enthusiast to want to do it, and that's still the case today.
Yep. What cat?
How about you,
I
Eric?
think it kind of depended on
Okay, Sean.
what you expected out of that interface because a lot of them were slow, but everything else was slow at the time too. So
Right. Yeah, I think the way Windows would do like just the window frame as you'd move it, and then it would fill it all
mhm.
in. That was kind of clever, really. What about you, Sean? What was
The
your first?
early so the first one that I used was probably like the original 128K Mac,
Okay.
and that employed some of the same tricks of just like dragging a rectangle around, and then it would like when you stopped, it would redraw, right? Um, and that was on a friend's computer who was at college and got the college deal through Apple at the time.
Mm.
Um, and then uh, uh, and then I was able to get Geos for a Commodore 64, and I went, ha! And then that really sucked.
You had to have the RAM expansion for that, otherwise that was no good.
I think it would probably have been better on a Commodore 128 just for the RAM, but
Sure, and the
yeah, on
speed.
the 64 it was like it was dog slow.
Yeah, those are interesting times for sure. So a couple here in the chat. I see code 2610. My the first PC I owned was an 8 megahertz 286. Now the question is, did he run Windows on it at all? So Don Leckland said, "I'm sure he used MS Windows before 3.1. It wasn't out yet, but I have no idea what version it was. It was that memorable." Hmm. What about you, Eric? What was your first graphical user interface?
I think I'm trying to put the time frames between the Apple and the 286 I had, and I think it was probably Windows 3.1.1.
Hmm.
That's my guess. What it was my first, because I used a lot of computers that were, you know, basic or DOS. Um, and yeah, really didn't have a lot of use for or interest in Windows at that point because it didn't do much. You would still start it from DOS, so the machine would boot in DOS, and then you would start Windows and run it for whatever reason you would want to run it. I guess I don't know, I just felt like it was just easier to do things from the command line.
Yeah, probably if you're
But
used to it.
then eventually, yeah, like when 95 came out, it was more useful, and then 98, I think once 98 hit, that was probably when the tipping point for when I stopped using DOS as much.
Gotcha. I was never
Yeah.
big into DOS really. Commodore, but not MS.
Oh, I tinkered around a lot in DOS.
Yeah, I used DOS a lot professionally. Most of our systems were DOS based
Oh sure,
at
yeah.
that time, and yeah, and just doing stuff in like batch scripts and stuff like that. So yeah, I was pretty heavily invested in DOS at that point. But then yeah, I mean, I think the 9 series Windows and then NT 2000 XP, like those all sort of like pushed pushed it over the top to where you weren't running a DOS environment underneath of Windows necessarily anymore. It was just Windows, you know.
Yeah,
Actually, you kind of were.
Well, it would just start to Windows instead of seeing DOS
Yeah,
necessarily.
but
Yeah. But I know what you mean. Yeah, I don't disagree. But
the
no, I never used Gem or Amiga CDE. What were you guys saying for the Commodore?
Geos.
What's it called?
Geos. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I never even. Yeah,
it's
that was very
okay.
conditional because back then, I mean, not everybody had a computer, and different people had different kinds of computers. And I think IBM clones were probably when I started to see computers more at people's houses. Whereas I would know, I had a Tandy TRS-80, and maybe someone I knew would have a Commodore 64, but it computers were still disparate and different enough back then,
Hmm.
and spread out to where it wasn't common for people to have them. So I think there was just a lot of technology during that era that I never saw because people around me didn't have it. So
Right. What about you, Ron? Was you were probably a Xerox is probably your first two, right?
No, I think it goes back to the ENIAC. That would be 45,
Mm.
46.
Okay, but I don't think that
Yeah.
was a graphical user interface, was it?
Oh, that's true. It's whatever star patterns you see in your mind's eye, I guess. That becomes your graphics. No, my journey in computers started, I guess, back in 78, 2K of RAM,
Oh yeah.
BIOS monitor that you can load some machine code into. Fast forward to, I don't know, 79 or something. CPM was the thing I was using along with DOS. And I think it was in 85. Oh, no, I lied. During the Apple times, there was this obscure obscenity that came my way. I think it was called Turtle Graphics.
Hmm.
It is, if I remember correctly, it was back in about 79. It was a standalone environment for programming and graphics with text editing and some floppy disk I/O, from what I remember. But the first real graphical use on a PC was probably Windows 3.0. Yeah, and that would have been back in 84, maybe?
Something like that, yeah. Maybe a little later.
Yeah,
I,
but
I
I
don't know my Windows
despised
timeline.
Windows 3, 3.3. Windows for Workgroups was nice. I love the fact that you can do networking without having to pay exorbitant sums of money to somebody like Artisoft for their Lantastic program. Yeah, the software was free, but you had to buy their network adapters for about, oh, $600 piece Canadian, which is 50 US, I guess.
I think yeah,
Nate?
something like
We'll
50,
take 10.
Yeah,
56. Yeah.
yeah.
So, David Martin says Geos for Apple II or Gem. So that's pretty cool. And then let's see, there's something else. So David Martin said he played with X on Unix in the mid '80s. So that's cool. And Hip Dad
HipDad says Viva CPM 80.
"Yep,
Damn
that's fun."
straight. I love that thing
you know what?
to this
That's
day.
what I that's what I was trying to decide whether it was Geos. I didn't know it was called Geos, but I remember being in grade school and using Geos on the Apple II, and that would have predated using Windows 3 because Windows 3.1 didn't come out until the 90s. So
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. What about you, Cruz? You're kind of a younger sort. What's your first GUI? Android?
My first it was desktop. It was Windows. I
Okay.
believe Windows 8, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, Windows 7, 8 thereabout.
Okay.
Yeah, until I switched to smartphones because I I grew up in the smartphones era.
Because
So I
you're
was
young.
using
Uh, so he didn't go
yeah.
outside and play and eat dirt. He would play with a cell phone.
Yes, I started using cell phones for almost everything. Homework, projects. Yeah.
Very cool.
Dude, that's
So
wild to me. Being
That's
being an
crazy.
old school guy, like
Yep.
I still fight with doing things productive on my smartphone. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
web browsing, certain apps and stuff, sure. But just like the idea of doing a project on my phone sounds like torture.
I don't even play games on my phone, which seems to be the thing these days. I mean, my phone, I text and occasionally answer a phone call and maybe check,
But then,
email.
but then
That's
I would
about
say
it.
is for someone like for 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 Cruz to go back and use a basic PC or something that you turn it on and it doesn't even do anything, right? You're like
Yeah,
staring at a
barely has
screen.
internet, if that.
Is
Yeah,
it like
right. So I mean,
a
I
blinking
think
cursor?
it's kind of like something I would see as hardship isn't really that difficult
Right.
comparatively because
Yeah.
you didn't even have a storage on the system. It was literally when the power was on, it
Floppy.
had volatile storage, and then as soon as it was off, that was it.
Yeah, and you use floppy drives to do anything.
I didn't even have floppies back then. My first storage drive was a cassette tape
Yeah.
drive from Radio
oh,
Shack.
Five and a
I
quarter
oh
just,
floppy
yeah.
drive.
I just remember growing up when there was there was no internet. You barely had TV. You had like public, PBS and ABC and whatever else, those things.
I had 5 channels.
Yeah, and you had the little rabbit ears, and you had to
Yeah,
adjust them,
yeah.
yeah, that type of thing. And our idea of communicating with people is actually meeting somebody at going to their house or going to dinner with them or
At the park.
whatever. It's
Roller
actual
skating.
socializing.
So
Oh
Hip Dad
goodness.
says my first GUI was Windows 3.1. Row the Dolphin says my first GUI was whatever was on the Tandy 1000. Duskmane, I think. It was sort of a GUI, no mouse, joystick. So that's fun. Yep. And then Mike Wallen says my first GUI was 3.1. So there was a game, I think, named Asteroid. I don't know.
Sounds like Atari.
Yeah, it could be. So I don't know if LeVar, if you want to, I think you put into chat, you put a leopard there. Would that be like Mac OS leopard? Is that what you're trying to say? Is that leopard?
Oh no, I was commenting on Jason when he was showing off his cats.
Oh, okay.
But
One
yeah,
of those?
I yeah, I used 98.
Okay.
As far as I can remember, yeah, I just remember using using 98 on some weird computer. Was I do remember though I had a compact at one point, this big white compact that I used for Windows. But yeah, I just remember looking at that loading screen, just thinking about how long it took for computers to load.
It
Like
did. It
Oh
took
yeah.
back then it seemed really really fast, but now that I'm thinking about it, it was really slow.
back then my process was because we talked about turning our computers off and on. It was always off, and I would turn it on to use it,
Yep.
and I would literally go and like make a cup of coffee. And then
Yeah.
by the time
So,
I got back, it would just be loading in.
and back in those days, we had nothing to judge it by. I mean, it's what
No.
we had is what we had. We didn't
Right.
have like, oh, this computer boots up this fast. This computer this boots up this fast. We had
Right.
that. That was
I
it.
was more I was more fascinated about the GUI, and for some reason, like on the Windows 98, the screen, at the bottom, there was like a progress bar, but not really. It was just like a graphic, and it was just going, back and forth. And I would just remember just looking at that while it was loading.
Yep.
Really,
Mhm.
Yeah.
thing.
Now the sounds that they made, I think, were very cool though. That you could hear the hard drive, moving around. And yeah. different noises it made. Like the chirps and
Mm-hmm.
whirring.
Yeah, I still have
Humming.
that sound in that computer right there, the Mac back there. It still has four, that's four drives in there. It has the SSD for the boot drive, but then it has storage drives, and they can still hear them spin up every once in a while.
Now I have to say though, modern SATA drives do not sound the same as the old IDE or the old
No, God,
IDE drives
no.
from the 90s.
Yeah,
Those have a
old
certain
scuzzies.
kind of sound to them.
Well, think about it. Computers had the hard drive spinning, you had modems for the communication, you had a CD-ROM tray or a floppy disk. Like there was always this like visceral auditory
Mechanical.
little
Mm-hmm.
miniature concert
Yep.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you turn up, you hear the CD-ROM, you hear the floppy drive seek, you hear the hard drive boot, and then you hear the CD-ROM spin.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like a
Power on.
cacophony of purpose.
Right. Well, and you
Yeah,
knew
and
things
then
by sound, and when something didn't sound right, you knew it was like, wait a minute, that's not right. Like, why is it
Uh-huh.
that
my
doesn't
computer
right.
gonna blow up. Duck.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That's how I knew I'd have a power supply going bad or something. You'd be like, you'd hear
Yeah.
the capacitor whining or something.
And
Or,
nowadays, all you hear is the 14,000 fans you have in a computer. They ramp up, and you know something's wrong.
yeah.
Well, either that or you're running ChatGPT, in which case everything ramps up.
Right.
I still have my 42 meg full height 5.25 inch Priam hard drive that was used in our server with Novell. I forgot which version, 3 point whatever. Back in the 80s, I still have that drive. It still runs at least 6 years ago or so when I powered it up, just because. Anyhow, the most redeeming thing of that drive for me is the fact that when you turn it on and it does its self-test on board, it sounds like a ball bearing has fallen out and hit the bottom of the drive. And that's when you know that the head's been released from the braking mechanism and
Yep.
all is good. And if you don't hear that ball bearing, there's a problem.
That's pretty wild.
It's
Yeah.
it's the only drive I remember having that kind of a weird audio signature when you powered it up.
I can't
Very
remember
bizarre.
I can't remember the name of the channel, but if you're into like really old stuff, it's like something like Yu-Gi-Oh.
Usagi.
Usagi. There we go. Usagi.
There we go. Yeah.
He's actually on my
Electric. Yeah.
yeah. I subscribed to him. I just had to find it. But no, that guy he like works on some old hard drives that weigh 90 pounds or whatever, something crazy.
Oh, he probably works on those
Yep.
old Winchesters.
Yeah, they're also,
No, they're platters. They
Yeah.
are individual platters that you can remove that are like 12 inches across.
Yeah, deck machines used to
Yeah.
use those. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine when I was in college, went to college in Boston. His father used to work for the Boston, not the Boston, but the Massachusetts State Lottery. And so he'd been working there for, years and years and years. He was already in his like 70s when I met him, so he's retired and yada yada. And he had in his basement, he had all these huge, ginormous drives and everything else that he got to keep. And I doubt any of them were actually plugged in or ran or anything, but it was like a museum in his basement. It was awesome.
that is cool. Yeah, Co2610 says old MFM was it R2 RLL drives?
RLL.
RLL. Okay. Yeah, those I don't know about RLL, but the old MFM drives, like that was in the old like IBM XTs, the double height guys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those were also something pretty special too. Like the sounds that those made. They
Did
sounded
you guys
like
see the question
business.
in chat?
Did I miss it?
Yeah, Terry in chat. I believe that's White
Ooh.
Chocolate. It looks like the
Well,
same picture. He
could
says,
have definitely.
question is for everyone, is what is your favorite dial-up provider from back in the day?
You've
And I'm
got
going to go with
mail.
AOL.
Yeah.
I'm going to say AOL. I'm sorry, but it was the
Well,
bomb.
let me ask Terry what was the first GUI he used? If you want to.
It was Windows 95.
Okay.
These
Ah.
young whippersnappers.
That was a pretty good,
Yeah,
I
these
think, ramping
young'uns.
on point for PC. I would say like Windows 95, if I may say, is like kind of like the modern era of desktop interface.
Yeah, Windows 95 is probably the one that yes, I started out in the the Commodore era and all that good stuff, but 3.1, 3.0, 3.1, yada yada yada. But I think 95 was the one that was made more. It was more quote unquote popular when when it was released. It was more out there and everybody was more people using it, and so it was a little bit more refined,
I think
so
it
to
also
speak.
helped. I think it was the Stones "Start Me Up" was the theme song for advertising on Windows 95. Am I wrong on that?
No, I think you're right. I
Yeah,
think that was it.
that was a big, big cultural shift. I mean, you're hearing the Stones singing for what? There's some
Okay.
lore out there that when the Stones were approached by Microsoft about licensing the song for, uh, the advertising jingles and what have you, that the Stones were going, "Who are these geeks, man? Just throw them a number that will make them run away," kind of thing, right? So I threw out a number which was, I think, 60 million, and without batting an eye, the staffer at Microsoft go, "Sure, no problem. Thank you."
Thank you. Come again.
Just linked to the launch video in chat. It
Launch
is.
video
It's
for
Start Me Up.
oh
Oh, I better not say it.
So Code 2610 says,
CompuServe. There's a name I haven't heard in a long time. CompuServe. So what was there? There was CompuServe. There was AOL. Um,
Net Zero.
there you go. That's the one I was thinking of. Net Zero. It's like the red
Also,
disc. The red
hey,
disc.
back in the day, Juno too.
Yeah, we had a local provider because I'm from originally from Maine, so way up there in last stop I-95 United States, way up there. So we had AOL, access to AOL. Everybody had access to AOL, but we also had the local internet provider, which is a Aroostook County internet, whatever it was called back in those days. So we got that instead of AOL because it was cheaper. Because well, just my father had connections, so it was cheaper. Um, and I just, oh God, thank Jeebus for the the increase in technology. That's all I got to say.
I think
Had
it
to be done.
officially makes me old that I watched the Start Me Up launch video for Windows 95 and it doesn't look like it's old.
Yeah.
I think anybody younger than me would look at that and be like,
What
wow,
the heck
things
is
were
this
different
crap?
back then. Yeah. Me, Windows, or yeah,
Yep.
1995. Wasn't that just like a couple years ago?
it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. It's,
Just happened.
it's like the Macintosh video there.
The
Um.
84.
Yep. This.
That one looks old. I'm sorry. Because the whole like floofy hair and
Mm-hmm.
that
Yep.
the 80s are long enough ago that I could admit that that's definitely like old. But 90s, somewhere in my head, 90s is still not.
But that hair in the 80s, man, oh, for a guy my age, yeah, that's where it's at.
Do you miss your hair? Is that what you're trying to say?
Oh my gosh, I miss my hair. I miss my
Hair.
youth's
Hair. What is
hair.
hair?
I have enough that I could give you each half of what I have, and I wouldn't notice. So
Keeping up with the Macintosh. Yes, that's the video I'm thinking of.
the Eric, that at 43 seconds, there's a video game it
Mm-hmm.
shows, and I don't know what it is. Is it Terminal Velocity?
I don't know. Let me see.
Oh God.
So
Maybe I
Ben,
should watch it. Oh lordy.
what was your first graphical user interface?
GNOME 2.
Wow, you're
Yeah,
the only
but
Linux.
before that it was well
Oh.
actually no. Before that it was Windows XP.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. But Linux wise it was GNOME 2.
So my kids will be
Yeah.
able to say their first graphical user interface was Plasma.
That's funny, Nate.
Yeah.
But
So
speaking of Linux, Nate, sorry to diverge here, but I
I
just
didn't get
posted four.
I didn't get to my
Sorry, go
desktop
ahead.
environment. I was excited to tell my desktop environment.
Yeah, there you go. But I just want to mention that I just posted the work in progress version of my script into the Gen chat on Telegram, and I also posted three other versions. One that uses apt, emerge, and zipper to actually pull in the ncurses, dialog, and gparted packages to start the script. So yes, folks, you can use Arch, SUSE, Gentoo, and anything Deb based to run a test version of my script with it. So
Well, that's pretty cool.
yes, so Nate, you can use your beloved SUSE based systems to test my script if you so choose.
Okay, in a VM.
I'm guessing you put that in there just for you.
He did. He absolutely did
I
that.
Yep, I figured I'd help Nate out and modify my script to work with SUSE for him.
It must have been simple enough for him to do.
Yep,
So
but yeah, my first desktop system that I ran was Windows XP. So.
Good.
And my
Goodness,
first
make
Mac
me feel
version was
old.
probably Leopard.
Oof.
I was late to the game on that one.
it's all right.
Yeah.
Someone's got to be. So my very first desktop environment or GUI that I used, I think I probably touched some others, but the first one I really used was the Amiga Workbench. So, because I didn't actually use Geos until after the Amiga. So, anyway, and I still have fond memories of it. Although when I use it now, I'm like, wow, I liked this. This is great. Yeah. Where's my tiling features? So anyway, I also find this the different internet service providers. So is it Donut? Is that one that nobody knows? Is it from HipDad? And then Mindspring, but I'm biased from Don Lakeland.
No idea. Doesn't ring a bell.
Dave Martin says CompuServe, fun but expensive. And he also said Prodigy and Earthlink.
Yes, I remember those two as well. I still think the most popular, out of those might have been like NetZero or AOL.
I think it kind of depends on when you jumped into online.
That's true too. Like when I first jumped in, we
Um,
used local.
yeah, but I remember going down to like the discount big box stores and buying a CompuServe starter kit
Ooh.
because that was cheaper than like signing up every month. So I would just like buy one of those every month to get online.
Yeah.
I think my first internet provider was a company called Quantum Internet. It was like qtm.net. That web address goes to something entirely different now. And that was dial up on the on my Amiga. It got email and everything. My first experience was on the Amiga with a 14.4 kilobaud modem, I believe.
Yep.
It's good times.
I
don't
just
think I
remember
still
the
have
one
it.
thing that put AOL on the market, so to speak, was their chat program.
Yep.
Wow, 14.4. You were screaming.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Hayes 300, acoustically coupled, CPM 2.2.
Nice.
I'd be back in 79-ish.
You ran that on your AMSI 8080?
No, actually, there was a machine called a Xerox 820, and some guy out in Oregon, Bend, Oregon, decided to do clone it. Yeah. So he cloned it. I bought one of those clones and ran 8-inch floppies on it. Annoyed the heck out of people around me because when that head loads, Ka-chunk. Yeah,
That's
it was
awesome.
pretty loud.
I've never
Yeah.
touched an 8-inch disc. I didn't know what it's like.
Oh, they're huge. You had
They're
to
eight
put them,
inches.
yeah, but you had to put them in real careful, like, or you bend the damn things. They were a
Never
nightmare.
put it in horizontally.
Really?
Always mount your drives vertically, and yeah,
Yeah,
life's
they
good.
were always mounted vertically. Yeah,
Yeah,
because you wouldn't bend. They were easier not to bend because of gravity.
yeah.
Well, I didn't know that.
I'll stick with 5 1/4.
If I have a
They
course,
were
good.
horrible too, but the eights were worse.
Yeah, I never used Gem. I know, like any Atari ST folks, they probably use Gem or CPM. Actually, Digital Research I think made Gem,
Hmm.
but they had some. But I guess Apple sued them for something, even though Apple copied the Xerox.
No.
It's pretty dirty. Dirty
People
Apple.
sue. People
Yeah.
suing people. Come on.
I know. That's how you stop innovation. So Code 2610 said a
You
1200
know,
BPS was my first modem until Lightning killed it. That's very sad. What was that,
you
Sean?
know when you have to go to your parents and say, "I need a telephone line for my modem," and they're going, "What's a modem?"
Yeah, that's one thing we had in my house is we had one phone for the house, one phone for the internet, and then each of us kids had our own phones.
Wow.
So it was at the time I think it was we had like 5 or 6 phone lines in the house.
Wow. Do you have a switchboard too?
Yeah, no switchboard. It was just easier because whenever somebody called if you just had one line and somebody called, and somebody answered the phone and you're on the internet,
Oh yeah,
goodbye.
you'd be like off. There's my download. It's gone.
Don't answer that phone. I'm in the middle of something.
Yeah.
I'm downloading an ISO. Come back tomorrow.
I'm downloading this video game or whatever. I don't know what they downloaded back in. I don't even remember what you downloaded back in those days. It wasn't much.
Yeah. For another discussion, what makes me think like the the things my kids will say or things that I will say, like I gotta make sure I charge the van for tomorrow. Like that's something my dad never said to me. Saying you didn't have to charge the van. So.
That's true.
No.
No. Well, there's another really good topic here. I think Eric, you did it. It's a who uses a smartwatch, what kind, and why. I think you're probably doing some market research, is what I'm guessing.
No, I'm actually just so there are certain professions that use smartwatches more so than I think the standard population, general population. So healthcare in particular, it seems like every time I go to a doctor's office, like a nurse or someone will have an Apple Watch on. And then also just in general, when I'm looking at people wearing watches, it seems like most people nowadays, if they're going to wear a watch, are either wearing a watch that's fashionable or expensive, or they're wearing a smartwatch,
Mhm.
which could be both technically. But um, yeah, so ultimately, I'm just sort of interested in like, because to this point, I've been like, why would I ever want that? Why do I need it? Like, I have my smartphone, I can get my notifications and everything that a watch can do, I can do on my phone. And then I've started to realize more and more that I'm missing notifications. So from that perspective, like having a smartwatch that I can see the notifications from my phone on, or at least feel them, that's helpful. And then just some of the capabilities of things you can do. And a lot of this came out of been having a conversation with people about the Pine Time and how inexpensive it is and how capable it is given how cheap it is. And like, yes, it's not anything approaching an Apple Watch, but it does all the things you would want it to do if you're just expecting to be able to check notifications, or it has a heart rate monitor. It has like some of the stuff, that other smartwatches have, but it's only, $25. So with shipping, it was like 40. So I got one because on the advice of, or on the reviews of many other people that I know that have them and actually use them. Because the other thing they say is that the battery life is good, and um, it's a good mix of like the features. But I didn't when I talk to them, some of these people are like, "Oh yeah, I've been wearing smartwatches for years, and I've had Wear OS watches, and I've had Apple watches, and I've had, all these different brands." And I think, I guess I missed the boat on that, and I'm just sort of getting around to it. But I just was curious, like, do people wear smartwatches? If they do, what do they have? Why do they have them? Do they find them useful? That kind of thing. So,
Yeah. So me personally, no, I don't wear a smartwatch. I don't even wear a watch. Um, my watch is the cell phone.
Mm.
Well, mainly because I don't really go anywhere much and don't need to have a watch or anything like that. I know some people definitely live by the smartwatch. Like typically, the people I know are primarily the Apple Watch type people. They have like iPhones. Like my brother-in-law has one, my sister has one, and they love them. My brother-in-law loves it because he can leave his cell phone in his office, and if he gets notification from his job or whatever, because he's like a sales manager for some medical company or something, and he can get the notification real quick, then he knows to go grab his phone and make a phone call. Or if he can answer the phone from his smartwatch, from the iPhone, the iWatch, Apple Watch, and then have his little Bluetooth doodad and earpiece and have the conversation right there. For that kind of that's why, like you said, you saw a lot of nurses use them. It's because they can't technically, most cases, nurses can't have their personal phones just out and about when you're helping with a patient, but they can have the watch on and get a notification. So that's why a lot of them, probably wear the watches, and they can use even with off hospital-based phone systems, like it's
mhm.
a work phone. They do that because it's less distracting than having a phone sitting around, and they can just get a notification like codes and
Mhm.
just needs to be well, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
But personally, I don't like wearing jewelry. That's the only reason I don't have a watch, an Apple Watch, is because I don't like the idea of having things on my wrists. I'm
Yeah.
I'm weird that way.
Nope, I understand that. I'm the same way.
I
So
actually
I
like wearing a watch, so go ahead.
I was gonna say I for the profession I retired out of, I had to have a watch, and so I did. And then once I was no longer doing that, I didn't have a watch anymore. Oh, I keep thinking about like a Fitbit or something like that, just to like just because. But I don't know. I just don't know.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I figure if I'm gonna try one, because I'm not convinced that I'm gonna like it, but I figure if I'm gonna try one and it's sub $40 and it's Pine 64 and it's, open and all that stuff, then, that's sort of the best of everything. And to have people who use it, and I'm not saying like one person, like probably 10 people I've talked to that have it, say that it is actually a useful device is kind of interesting. And the most interesting thing is that several people have said that their spouse, like their wife, that is not a technical user, not a technical person, likes the Pine Time. Like likes the feature set, likes how it works, likes that the battery lasts for usually close to a week and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, well, that's a pretty, glowing review for someone that doesn't even understand or care about what Pine 64 is or, any of that to still find it to be a valuable product. So that's what made me sort of push me over the edge. And the other part I put in here is like I do wear a watch, but I wear like an old guy watch. And there are times where I'm like looking around going, "Yeah, okay, yes, I've got my old Timex.
But
You
you
need
use
like
one
a
of those calculator watches.
like old Casio. That's what you need to get.
Yeah.
I've considered that, except I wouldn't be able to see the keys. Like, that'll make it worse.
That's how you know it's the old guy watch. Like,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Gotta get my bifocals out to use the calculator. Nah. So I just,
You know,
I'm,
it'll spit out some number. It may not be the one that you need, but
it'll be at
oh
least as
goodness.
reliable as generative AI. There you
And
go.
you said it was a pine something?
It's called a Pine Time, and
Pine
Pine.
Time, yeah.
it's from Pine 64. They make two models. They have one that's a developer model that's open, so you can literally take it apart and then connect a lead to it and like program it. And then they make one that's sealed, that's more like the consumer facing. And I got the sealed one. And yeah, people say the battery lasts, close to a week, depending on use.
4 megabytes of user storage.
Yeah, I mean it's not meant to be like powerful at all. It connects to your phone. You get notifications. It has a heart rate monitor. It's got real basic, just sort of set of
Yeah,
functionality.
the
Gotcha.
the sensors are pretty minimal, and that's fine. Uh, and it's not supposed to be a smartwatch. It's supposed to be like a fitness
So
tracker.
it's a Fitbit type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I smash the face or if I like, I'm usually pretty gentle on my watches, but yeah, if something happens to it or I don't know if I hate it, it's not a big deal because it's just not. But I'm just I like watches. I'm not a watch collector. I'm not going to spend any real money on something. But
Mm.
yeah, I just kind of thought, you know what? Why not try it? So
What's an Apple Watch go for these days?
You
depends.
don't
They
want to
sell
know.
three different models of them, three different generations of
Yeah,
them.
depends on
Apple.com we
the.
go.
Yep, depends on the version that you want. Yeah.
Oh my God, they've got Series 9, Ultra 2, SE, Nike,
Mm.
Hermes, Studio.
So
Yeah.
so take out another mortgage, and you may be able to afford an Apple Watch.
Should have picked that Series
Maybe
9.
not.
That is. He's right. That's literally how daggone expensive these suckers are.
Okay,
Oh yeah.
so
I
the
mean,
aluminum Series 9 is $400.
Yep.
I can get iPad for that price, basically.
I
That's
can get a
crazy,
desktop for $400, easy,
right?
with a
You can
full
go to Walmart
graphics
and get a
card.
laptop for that price.
Yeah, but strapping that desktop onto your wrist, man, that's gonna be rough.
It'll
Yeah,
be good for
the
digital
Uh,
workout.
I'd strap it to the
He's
back
right.
instead.
really depends on your biceps. Come on.
Yeah. We get real swole
Oh
real quick.
goodness!
Just
Wow.
yeah, the
strap
most expensive one
Yep.
is the what is it? The Watch Ultra 2,
Ultra,
which
yep.
is $799.
That's because
I
it's
think
like, isn't
most
that the one that's
people
like
get
designed for outside or something?
yeah, it's supposedly rugged and
Yeah,
um
for like outdoor.
Yeah.
It's like Nate activities when he goes camping and stuff.
right,
with
Yeah.
the
glamping.
Steam Deck.
You
Camping with
know.
his little
When he
fancy
goes
little
glamping. Yeah.
thing.
It's an. I need to get an RV so I can glamp because just sleeping on the floor business
Oh,
and setting up
what?
tents.
Yeah, this is like the last time I went camping. It's been a while. But I'm from Maine, so we did a lot of camping. I was in college when I was in Boston, and part of a church group back in those days, and we all went camping, a big group of us. Nobody over there nobody knew how to set up a tent, so I ended up setting up 20 plus tents. And then here comes the good person that was running the whole thing, our leader or whatever you want to call it for our group, and they had come with this ginormous tent with air mattresses and all this kind of stuff. I go, that's not camping. You might as well just go stay in a hotel. If you're
Well,
going to
someone once
sleep on an
said.
air mattress, lay on the ground.
Someone once said to me, "My idea of roughing it is Holiday Inn Express."
Yeah, pretty much. Oh God. Yeah, I grew up on a lake in northern Maine, and then we would take the boat out to the island in the middle of the lake. And it was called. There's two islands. There was the one that we camped on, and there was Blueberry Island. That was an island that was every summer, every certain time of year, every year they would fill up with blueberries, and you go and pick them. But then the other one that we went to camp on, we would just go up there. We set up a tent and a few tents because it's probably usually about 6 or 7 of us that would go. And you know, I miss those days because there was no technology, so nobody was on their cell phones goofing off or on a computer or as our Nate, with his full friggin' 6 monitor setup that he probably brought with him when he went camping.
7.
Um, but it's we would roast hot dogs and s'mores and all this kind of stuff and stay up all night talking and drinking beer when we're supposed to. That type of thing,
Naughty.
is
Naughty
yep,
Jason.
yep. I was shame on me, but it was great. It was those are the times. No technology back in those days. We went outside and ate dirt.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
I think as a kid,
Beer was legal back then for him, so it's okay.
it's true.
Actually, yes,
uh,
because I was on a private lake, so that the only people that can come out there were the stadies, and they never came out. So
Yeah, when I went camping as a kid, I would I'd bring like computer magazines with me and long for my Commodore 64. So I mean, that's just what it
See,
was.
Nate, when I was a kid, we had we had like
Where's
the
the
Tandy,
outlet? Where's
we
the
had like the
outlet?
486
No.
machine or whatever, but we didn't long for that kind of stuff. We would rather go outside and rough it and eat hot dogs and s'mores and
Look,
whatever
I
else and hang out and talk.
like I'm just on the edge of Gen X, so I don't have all the Gen X traits like yourself. So, but on that, it is time. We need to talk about next week. So next week is gonna be an off week. I have the county fair next week, so next Saturday I'll be
All right.
not here. But
What?
well, I'll be with the kids all week doing. I'm part of the poultry committee.
Kids would rather be on this
So-
show than go to some county fair.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah, but I'm on the poultry committee, so I got to be.
That's all
So virtual county
I know,
fair
I'm
right
just teasing, of
here.
course.
Yeah, it is kind of like a fair here. There's a bunch of animals in this.
Yeah. That's all right.
But
When you would say dark one Linux, when you say go up to the county, what do you mean? I'm from the county. I'm from the last stop by 95 United States.
Well, what's going to be the week after, Nate, then?
so we're gonna. It's, a lot of people are talking about it right now, and it's public beta is available. So, Cosmic desktop environment,
Cosmic.
Not beta.
Hey.
the alpha, whatever is
yeah.
available. So I thought it'd be, excuse me, kind of to tie in the fact we're talking about GUIs and whatnot. I think it'd be fun to just test it out, knowing that it is going to be a beta, and just kind of talk about what you think. So I don't know the best way of getting it, but however you choose to get Cosmic onto a desktop, it might be fun to try out.
Good luck.
Because it is released, and a lot of people are really excited about it. So I just thought it might be fun to talk about.
Yeah.
There is an ISO based on 2404 Ubuntu
Yeah.
for Cosmic.
Sweet.
That's like their official release will be based on that. So
All right.
Yes.
But I got to read this real
All
quick.
right.
So
Well, that'll be
Donald McAnna says, I would take a stack of sci-fi novels with me with when we went camping in the 70s and early 80s. Yeah, see, I think we would have gotten along, except that I wasn't alive in the 70s. So
I was.
that was,
I was born
Anyway.
in the 70s.
I
Shit.
believe it. All right.
What part
so,
of Maine, Dark?
My family always says, Nate, that I was born in the wrong era because I love all the old rock music from back then.
no, you're born
You
in
have
the
taste.
Right. You're born in the time you're supposed to be born. It just means
Yes,
that you're more of a historian. You respect the old.
Yeah, I respect the old stuff. Yes.
Yeah, so that's good. We need people like you.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, and one other thing about my script, Nate, I just
Yes.
updated it to include BIOS and EFI compatibility for Grub, as well as a package manager called Scratch Package from Venom Linux. So, for those that need a package manager, there you go.
All right. Then we can ask you questions, in the telegrams.
As you go, yes. And I will be testing it after the show, like I say.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yes.
All right. So,
Fun times ahead.
for a little housekeeping, next week, no Linux Saloon. I'll be at the county fair.
No show next week.
No show.
Got it.
I would.
no
Maybe we'll just-
no show with Nate. It could be somebody else.
Unless somebody else wants.
If they
step
want to.
in, like Eric. Anyway,
Cough, 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 agenda, cough.
Yeah,
And I
we'll
could-
figure
I could
something out for next week.
and I could join you live from the.
From the place.
From
If you want.
Actually, I probably couldn't because the internet's really bad there. At least it was last
Yeah.
time.
I was definitely paying attention the whole time and wasn't doing something else and not listening. And
Good.
And
Well,
Perfect's
yeah.
name is like, I'm here, honest.
Perfect.
He's like, oh crap.
Well, if there's a
Figures
change.
you'd-
What's
I
up for
didn't do
whatever
the
he's
homework,
doing?
boss.
I'd look away for a second and you'd be like, yeah, Eric will do it. What?
Hey, Eric, you got internet, right?
It's true.
different.
It's hard to
He's
say
got
no
Got
to that.
internet,
Yeah.
and he has.
You would have to start-
He has the ability to use this this Zoom thing, Jiggy. Hey,
He would
Greg.
have to start the stream though at like 8:15 to get past when his internet resets.
Yeah,
Here's my
That's
youngest
true.
cat.
That's true.
Ooh.
Oh, look at Little
This is
cat.
Greg. He's gonna eat my microphone, but he's gonna be a year old next month.
Nice.
Wow, that's a young cat. All right, so time for last call. Eric, you said you were working on some Distro Hoppers Digest excitement.
I am. I'm trying to refactor some of the. So basically, the edits have been like I take a pre-recorded lead in, like an intro, and then a pre-recorded outro, and then all the middle of it is just what we do that episode. And then those two pieces have gotten out of date, and so rather than just recreate what we have, I'm trying to rethink, and make it sort of a fresh thing. So yeah, just kind of the situation basically is that Dale and I are, Dale has been doing it for a while, but I have been doing it for the better part of a year now, and all the people who either started it or had been doing it have stepped away, and so really it's now our show, and we're kind of like thinking that, well, maybe it's time to make some changes, and so we're kind of working through some of that, and yeah, so
Makes
but
sense.
54 should be out, I don't know, in a week or so or less, I would guess. So yeah.
Cool. Fantastic. So I don't know if Steve is still in the chat, but he has a live morning show at 8:30 a.m. Central most Sundays. Although we did lose a couple of Sundays he wasn't there, but assuming he has it, he'll be 8:30 a.m. Central. He just kind of, it's like Steve's musings. I have a podcast called Linux Out Loud. If I think record this week. I think Matt, who's in the chat, he record with him. He's of the three co-hosts, he's probably the second best. Wendy, of course, is the best. So I don't know, what did we talk about last week, Matt? I don't remember. Anyway, it was a couple weeks ago, so it's already been filed. It was good though. I'm sure it was good. I'm sure. I have a website called cubiclelate.com. I write things. So like I was having an issue with the Steam store where it was blank in the app, and so I figured out a fix for that. Did some searching. It's pretty simple. Something with GPU acceleration is broken. So anyway, did an article on cubiclelate.com for that. So you can check that out. So Linux Saloon is part of the Text Digital Network, so check out more great shows at textdigital.com. I thank you all for your support. However you do it, being a part of the conversation, both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, as well as everyone for watching this show after the fact. I want to thank you, everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computers. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see you.
Good night, everybody.